Hello and welcome to the second part of my project, my honors capstone project. This is looking at the visual guides and interpretations, models of different zoological habitats. Right here in the middle is where we have our more modern approach, but we'll come back to that one here in a minute. We're going to come over here and look at this little one on the side. This is an example of what a classical, I guess is a more proper word, classical exhibit would look like in modern England. So with a lot of historical exhibits, much of the architecture is based on what is happening in the city and the country that they're from. So again, if it's modern England, we have this red brick, we have white siding, we have the green types of roofs, we have these metal bars and the plaster and concrete floors that are all very traditional of the time. We have these sitting areas with, again, these wrought iron benches, the patterning and such. Same thing with the trash cans. And then we have planter boxes. There's a lot of emphasis on making the people be able to feel like they could go out and enjoy their trip to the zoo. But there was much less care about what the animals had. And that's kind of seen in here. We're never completely blank inside in historical exhibits. There was always something, so they'd have like their hay that they can use to bed down in, and they have obviously these structures that they can climb up on, so there's at least something a little different, something to do. But for the most part, they were just kind of left to their own devices. They were kind of put in here, do just their one door. They're kind of shoved in here by the people. Food would be kind of left sometimes on a tray if they managed to go in without having the creature. If caretakers managed to go in without having the creatures get mad or come after them, otherwise they could literally just shove it through the bars. And they would do a similar type of thing with their hoses again. They would just come over and just kind of hose things out. Sometimes there'd be a drain along the back, which is one thing I couldn't get to work in here the way I wanted. So sometimes there'd be a drain along the back that they would just hose everything into and then go down the drain and just flow out the sides, come back out the building. But that was it was very much focused on just having the animals so that people could see them, and that was it. They didn't care how the animals were taken care of. They didn't care necessarily whether the animals had good living conditions. They just wanted to have the animals and give people a way to see them. Now, in a more modern approach, obviously it's much bigger. It takes up a huge amount more space. And while people are definitely still a focus, there definitely are still elements that appeal directly to people. There are also many that go very strongly towards animal welfare and animal care, animal rights and all of that. So one of the more interesting things that comes with that is animal privacy. And when we go through the viewpoints, you'll be able to see that better. But you'll notice how, if I get a good spot to sit in here, there is a lot of different elevation change here within the snow leopard habitat. And that's for two reasons, one of them being snow leopards are from the mountains and they actually enjoy elevation change. The second one being that if they're higher up, like back here, they can be sort of hidden from the guest's eyes. They won't be able to be seen. They can get that privacy that they want. They will be safe and kind of spared from the guest's eyes and be able to go and relax. Another thing that is very important is borders. So we have a number of different borders. Often more than one type is used per exhibits. This will include lowered exhibits, which is sort of like this section over here. Again, this is multiple parts. We also have a moat here, but sort of like this section right here. And lowered exhibits are where the outside of the exhibit, or I guess it's this part over here, is a slightly better example. The outside of the exhibit is higher than the inside. so that you are looking down, and this helps keep the animals down inside so that they obviously can't get out, and then the guests have this higher view. Another method that's very commonly used, and again it's this face right here, is natural walls. And as you see, we have this very realistic looking rock wall. Lots of outspurts with the rocks. We have different plants growing in here, different mosses, all creating this very natural look. We also have, again, one of them kind of here along the edge of the moat, and again the same over here as we were looking at before. All of them creating very natural views. You can also use natural walls within the exhibit itself. So here's where normally a retaining wall would be needed to support this chunk of dirt up here that's much higher. Instead, they use plaster and concrete to create these natural rocks if they can't find ones that look normal enough otherwise. What you've probably seen on all of the rock walls are these black parts with the wires coming out. These are hot wire fences. So what these are, they're very non-intrusive fences that are quite literally just almost an electric fence of sorts, where if the snow leopards came up and bumped them, they'd feel the shock. Obviously, they don't want to get shocked again. It's not a hard shock or anything, but they hit the shock, realize they don't want to get hit by that again, and just leave. So they're a barrier that's, again, very non-intrusive, very limiting, very low power. It doesn't take a lot to keep these going, but very effective at keeping animals contained. And then obviously we have one of the most classic barriers in this moat right here. And again, the reason why we have... Oh, you'll notice that while the moat is doing the obvious thing of being a moat and being hard to cross, again, we have the natural walls, the rock walls, and the hot wire all on the other side of it. This is because animals can swim even if they are unlikely to, such as the snow leopards, not common swimmers, not commonly known for their swimming abilities. They can swim. They can if they really wanted to, so then just in case, that's why we have all of these extra sets of barriers in place. Because you want to keep the animals in and safe. Because if the animals get out, that's when bad things happen to both the animals and to other people. You may have also seen in the back part over here, there is just normal fence, and that is completely normal for zoos to do, especially in areas where guests can't necessarily see it. This fence isn't, the animals aren't going to feel any different about this fence than a natural wall. They're not going to behave any differently about it. But the reason why fences like this are still important to have is because keepers need to have an ability to access into the exhibit, whether it be through just a normal gate, a normal human-sized gate, or whether they need to get a truck in. So then you could have a large gate, a truck-sized gate inside of this, and they could drive the truck in when the animals are out off display in their back holding, which I'll get to in a minute here. Drive the truck in, take stuff out of the truck, for example, if they're putting a new tree in, if they're putting new branches in. If they're removing trees or branches, they don't want to do all of that by hand. So this would be letting them do that. Again, if they need to get into the exhibit and the snow leopards are in the back area, this would let them get in, clean up the exhibit as they need to, put food out, reset the enrichment items, and get back out without having to mess with the snow leopards. Back holdings. This is where animals can go if they feel extremely stressed. If they feel a need to escape from the guests or from the public. Often in back holdings there's a couple different sets of areas. So we have one right here that can store a single animal. We have one right here that can store another animal. And we have one right here. And what you'll notice is happening right now is that some of these gates are open, and that allows for the animals to come in if they want to and access both this holding and this one, but not necessarily... Ooh, I just phased through a wall. but not necessarily this one here on the end. And again, why this is needed is if one of the animals has a medical procedure and they need to be separated for a bit, then they can still be in a place where they're having contact. They can still smell, they can still interact through the bars with the other animals. They can still get some of that social need that they do have, but they are safe and separated. Obviously, again, this is a gate that can kind of swing around to block up to here or over here, if needed. And then we have this one that's right in the front where the keeper gate is. So often what will happen is there will be a system of locks. So this one can be closed so that this is a separate thing. The keepers can then open both this holding and this holding, let the snow leopards come in there. There will often be entry ports between the holdings so that they can enter directly from number 1 here into number 2, and then into number 3. So the keepers can close them into 1 and 2, close this gate so that they are locked in 1 and 2. The keepers can come out here, and from here they can then open the gate between 1, 2, and 3, so they have access to all 3 holdings at the same time, while the keepers are safe and protected in the very back. One of the other things that many zoos have to do is they have to come up with ingenuitive ways to interact with the animals, to do medical procedures, to do trainings and all that, and that's what this right here is me attempting to represent. So it looks like it's just a sort of table, and that's kind of right, but the table part isn't exactly what you want. Yes, you can get the animals to come up onto the table, which gives you a good visual inspection of them. Using training methods, you can get them to come up onto the table when you need them to, so that you can visually inspect them if you need to, if you're concerned about their well-being. What's more interesting right here is the tunnel underneath. Keepers will often train animals, especially big cats like snow leopards, to go into these chutes of sort, come in here and stay in here for a small amount of time, which allows them to open these ports here and get in with their own hands safely, because the animal can't move back and forth or move side to side and escape or mess with the keepers that are trying to do something. So this allows them to perform ultrasounds. This allows them to do basic medical procedures if they need to take blood and the animal doesn't overly react to a shot. Same thing with vaccines. Or if there's just some sort of wound that needs to be rebandaged. It's a lot more calming for both the animals and the keepers to not have to sedate the animal and just be able to leave them in there, access them through one of these ports while they're in this chute and can't get their head whipped around or claws whipped around to hit the keepers and the vets that are accessing them. And again, it's just so much simpler, so much more beneficial to both parties, because the stress caused to the animals whenever they have to be sedated is often higher than what we want to apply. And then in the back area, obviously they have their tools like hoses, ladders. Again, you'll see that we have a larger door to go in and out. Again, if they need to bring vehicles in for whatever, they have that. They have their smaller normal access door, and these normal access doors often have extra safety measures, as do the big ones, but the big ones can often only be opened from the inside anyway. So normal safety measures on these is usually there's actually 2 doors here. One that's a normal door that prevents things from coming through, and that'd be the exterior one more often than not. And then the interior one, and this is again another thing that I couldn't figure out how to quite represent the way I wanted to, so we're just using another normal door. The interior one is often a just safety door. It doesn't block things, block like airflows. You could put your hand through it, but it's another door to have there just in case, so that if somehow the snow leopards manage to get into this back area, you can not have no visual on how to get in here. You can open this one door here, and you can still see in. You can have that visual view in to see what's happening, see where the snow leopards are, but still be completely safe from the outside, from a normally blocked off area. And the same thing, there's always no extra locks on exhibit doors, always extra locks on the transfer switches to open back holding areas, all of that, just because the extra safety is almost always needed or wanted. Alright, I will be back in just a second. I need to reset views so that, or change camera views so that I can give a better explanation of the next section. Alright, so here we are now in a first-person perspective. What I'm going to be talking about from this point of view is viewing points. So in this exhibit I designed 3 viewing points, one of which is this bridge going over the moat and stream beyond. Again, this lets you see a small amount of the exhibit, lets you see this front part, lets you see on top of these rocks, lets you see the waterfalls over here. But as you start looking further and further back, you're blocked by many of these trees, many of the shrubs, many of the foliage. Through here you can kind of see they have this big rock up top, but again, it's not a great view. It's partially obscured, and that's part of the point of the exhibit. Snow leopards are very solitary, very reclusive animals. So the fact that things are hidden is actually very normal for them. They like to have lots of these hiding spots. So from here you can again see those things, but there's a lot of hiding spots from this angle. If you come down here further, the path actually goes away from the exhibit, which is a great way to again give the animals more personal space. If the path comes away, you can't really see into the exhibit that well from over here, can you? You can see a little bit, maybe around the central rock, but mostly you're just seeing the exterior parts of the exhibit here, the other foliage, the other areas. So that's, again, a great way of providing animals less stress, giving them more privacy and such. Second example is this little shack in here, and often in these types of little viewing areas, small little viewing areas, there are informational boards talking about the different things in the animals. You might be able to hear the in-game audio, or in-game audio is the best way to put it. But there are speakers in here providing natural ambiance of a forest noises, so things like crickets and birds and all of that. But again, you have this glass viewing area now that you can see straight through. You can see, again, this enrichment item here that they have ripped open and gotten some meat out of. There's one of them, they're still playing with it. You can see these trees on the sides. You can see a little bit down this way. You can see a little bit down this way, but again, you can't see that far. You have, again, lots of things blocking you, providing lots of that more realistic and very beneficial viewing from the animals. Now you might say, well, the animals can just see straight into you. And sometimes they can. It depends on what type of glass you're using. However, this is one-way glass. So the animals can actually not see straight through. So you are here in. So sometimes they might just come right up here and take a nap. And especially if this is a very shady area, or very warm or cool area, they very well might just come up here and take a nap or something like that. Again, when you see these types of structures in zoos, they try and make them very realistic to the habitat that the animal would be from. That's kind of what I tried to accomplish. I could have done a better job, but it's sort of there. Again, we kind of walk back out now. We go up to the third viewing area, which is this one up here. Again, you have this foliage and break in the viewing of the habitat to again provide that extra space for the creatures, for the snow leopards. And then you get up here and you have again a view. This one lets you see from above, so this time you're getting again that lowered habitat barrier that I was talking about before. You can see down in here, you can again see the prey dummy that they can use, or that the snow leopards can use to enrich themselves and mentally feel like they're actually hunting in the zoo, even though they are not necessarily doing so. You can again see these big points in the back, you can see these smaller ones in the front, and a little bit off to the side over here. But again, you don't have full view of any one spot which is something that is very important for zoos and very important for the safety of the animals. You'll also notice here that there's a barrier right here, a fence right here. Now this fence would make absolutely no difference if a snow leopard managed to get up here, but they can't get up here because of the walls and such that are already in place. So this fence serves an equally important purpose of preventing guests from getting in. You've probably heard in the news sometime when a guest does something stupid, climbs over a barrier like this, and goes right down into the exhibit. These barriers exist for a reason. It is to keep these stupid guests out. Again, if they really wanted to, they could probably figure out how to get in anyway. But this is to prevent safety accidents from happening. What I'm trying to get at with that point is, don't be stupid, don't go in. Unless you're in a virtual simulation, you can climb up and down things very fast. Now I'm going to come down into the exhibit myself, if I can't get off of being stuck on things. And just give a quick little run through of what the bottom of the exhibit looks like. So again, we have this section here of elevated area. And you'll notice that it's elevated all the way around. It's got the rock walls all the way around. And what this is doing is this is providing, again, sort of that elevation change to hide the back holding area from people's view so that they can't, or so that the snow leopards get some secrecy, some privacy. With much larger species, such as pachyderms, rhinos, elephants, bears often, you see things like this done to prevent them from getting up and destroying the foliage, because they are very destructive and powerful animals. So if they were able to get to these trees that are up here, they would just rip them to parts. So this would keep the trees safe and be able to have some in the exhibits that leaves could fall down, they could eat from the branches, all of that, etc. Again, there's many different elements of a forest that you can see in play here. You have the trees, you have the dense underbrush. You have multiple different ways. As you can see, there's another way to get up to the top point here. Scattered throughout the exhibit are enrichment. So here we have a blood plate that can be refilled, and it provides some sensory stimulation to the snow leopards. Again, they feel like they are getting that extra stimulation by looking and smelling for the blood plate, almost as if they're hunting. Another one over here is something that you see used a decent amount, and that's where this is a prey line feeder, so the keepers can take prey like a duck or a pheasant or something like that and string it up here. And then the snow leopards have to figure out how to get it down, and this thing rotates, so it spins around in the air as they're hitting it. And they have to get it down, so that, again, makes it feel more natural that they're hunting and stuff like that. I believe that is everything that I have to show this. I'm just going to walk around a little bit so that people can get a nice view of all of the different elements of the exhibit. And I thank you all for watching my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all learned something. And I wish you all the best of luck.